Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We're on episode 8 of Violet Evergarden. It's the magical rule of 8. I have this theory, if you've watched my other reactions, especially for 12 episode series, and I know Violet Evergarden's 13 episodes, but I have this running theory that episode 8 is always the pertinent one. It is the important episode. It's where stuff happens. It's in the 3-act structure of a story. It's where everything's gearing up towards the final act. And then, so if episode 7 was the end of act 2, it ended on a note. I sobbed my eyes out at that episode. It was so sad and it was so beautiful. And the message of it was just the idea of these two coming together and grieving together. It was so good. But yeah, this is episode 8. So if you're following the 3-act structure, then episode 8 is usually the episode leading into the final act. And I know this is a 13 episode series, so there's gonna be an extra episode in there, but we ended with Violet finding out that everyone thinks Gilbert's dead. Now, whether he is or not, I don't know, because they don't know where his body is. They just assume he's missing in action. They assume he's missing in action, and they assume that he's dead. So, but we don't have confirmation of that, right? So I feel a little bit of hope there. There's like a glimmer, like a tiny little sliver, but it's not much. But it's a little sliver of hope that I'm like, maybe Gilbert's alive. Maybe by some means he is, but probably not. And now we have Violet, who's just helped this father grieve the loss of his daughter. Violet's gonna have to come to terms with, she just came to terms in episode 6 with the fact that she had, killed people. And now in the last episode, she came to terms with that even more, so it's just, I'm dreading this episode because this is probably going to be a very sad episode if Violet's going to, be thinking about all of this stuff with the Major. But we saw Benedict watching her leave, so I hope that Benedict goes after her, because I think if anybody can be a comforting presence, it'd be like the first friend she made at the auto memory doll service, which would be Benedict. So, but I'm just really nervous because it's episode 8, and last episode, the way it ended with Violet running off, and she's sad, and I don't know how she's going to cope with this, because it's like she's been pushing off that thought for this entire series up until now, and just kept saying, oh, well, when I see the Major, and the fact that Hodgins, he couldn't tell her, and so yeah. So it's time to rip off the Band-Aid, shall we? Let's just rip off that Band-Aid and I'm sure it'll be a fine episode. It'll be great. There will be no reason for tears. None whatsoever. But yeah, so yeah, let's do this. We're going to start Violet Evergarden episode 8 here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. My heart is broken. This show, to be honest, the first couple of episodes, I've enjoyed watching this show from the beginning. I'll be honest. I have enjoyed watching this show from the beginning, but the first couple of episodes, everything's like slowly building, and it's like, it's kind of like a roller coaster, where the train originally is just like, that's how I felt like episodes 1 through 5 were. They were, and then in episode 5, it's like you start to get to the hilltop, and you start to see the top, and you're like, oh, Violet's gaining emotions, and she's learning how to talk about love and realizing things. And you get to episode 6, and it's like you're starting to get up in the hill, and you're starting to see that there's a big crest there, and you're like, oh man, Violet's really, talking with others about love, and she understands what love is, and she just doesn't exactly know how to express it, because like in this episode, she didn't understand what the word beautiful, like she didn't know the word beautiful, so she couldn't describe it. And then episode 7 is like you're at the top of the hill and you're starting to see it, and then episode 8 is we're on the roller coaster now. Oh my gosh. Kiwani, it's weird because I've only known Kiwani for I've seen Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, and so I know that they're capable of like fire and action scenes. And I've seen Free, and so Free and this are vastly different. Like seeing Kiwani do these like gritty war scenes, but it's weird. They're the most beautiful gritty war scenes. It's like even when the blood splattering, it's like the most beautiful, like elegant shot of blood splatter you've ever seen in your life. It's like the fire and everything. It's just Kiwani can't help but be the most beautiful animation you've ever seen. And then, of course, they had to put like a water shot in. They just had to have one water shot. They're like, oh, by the way, we can animate water. But, it's insane to me. First of all, the whole war aspect of it. I know several of you are going to be like talking about like the politics and the world building and stuff. That's not important to me right now, because we've gone to all these fictional countries in this world, and they all have different names. And there's like Charlotte's country and Damien's country, and that's how they got together. Like that. That's for me isn't the important part of the story. It's the characters that I'm really drawn to in this, and their struggles and their trials and tribulations. And the funny thing is, the whole time that the one general was talking about like the advancement and the 30,000 troops versus the 60,000 troops, I didn't care. I was like, I get it. It's war. And when you see the battlefield and you see Violet like killing all these people, it's like, yeah, that's war. In the end, it's like the sides, it's irrelevant, right? The only part that's relevant is when Gilbert takes her to the festival and he's like, look, this is all what you've done. Everything you've done has been so that these people can enjoy things. But like Violet said, she's like, all those people I killed had loved ones that they cared about that they're not going to get to spend time with. So it's Violet's realizing the two sides of it. And I think to an extent Gilbert does too, but his hands are kind of tied, right? Oh man, this episode. It's rule of 8, y'all. In an 11 to 13 episode series, the 8th episode is going to get you. I didn't cry. I got close a few times, but I didn't cry. I was more like soul crushed than sad. Well, we need to go through this. Oh my gosh, because there is a lot. I feel so bad for Violet, because over the course of this series, like I said, the series started out kind of slow, and it's a slow build. It's a slow building of Violet, understanding who she is, understanding what she's gone through, and then in these last couple of episodes, seeing how she's starting to just fully bloom, and then it's just like someone took a boot and stomped on that flower. It's like, So also, this episode comes back full circle to episodes 1 and the flashbacks we've seen so far. It's kind of insane, but we go back to when Gilbert first met her. And I wondered if Dithard had got picked her right up off the boat. Like she was fresh off the boat, and he's like, here's the sea urchin that I found that killed half my men. But Gilbert, I'm so like, it's like Gilbert is playing me like a fiddle, because it's like Wanji and Modazushi. It's like Gilbert, like these type of male characters that like have infinite heart and compassion. I'm like, just stop. I'm like, of course she'd fall for him. Who wouldn't? But yeah, like Gilbert instantly looking at her like, oh my God, you're a kid. What are you doing? What is happening? And he has so much, the contrast between Gilbert and Dithard, I talked about it in the opening. She doesn't have a name. I've just been calling her you. Say hello. And he like forces her down. And Gilbert's like, stop it. And like cradles her. He's like, you can't treat a child like that. And he's like, Gil, she's no child. It's like, and so that begs the question. Now, Dithard says she's a weapon. And I know there's been a lot of debate in the comments about how old Violet actually is. That's kind of irrelevant at the point in this episode. The point is that Dithard treats her like a non-human. Dithard treats her like a weapon, like a tool. She's just to be used. And Gilbert treats her like a human being. That's the main difference here, is that Dithard treats her just like a weapon, something that's disposable, that you just use and expend and get rid of. And Dithard's like, this is a human being. Like, no. And I love the contrast of the two of them. Dithard with his hair and the little ribbon and everything, and in the casual clothes. But his eyes and Gilbert's eyes are so different. Like Dithard's are so cold and dismissive. And he's like, she's just a war tool. And Gilbert is like, his eyes have that like the dilated pupils and the gleam and the compassion still and the humanity left in them. And then Gilbert's like, I'll take her. And Dythard's like, oh, good, you get to have her now. And the army's going to use her. And I love that she looks up and sees his eyes, and that's what she's fixated on. Like, everywhere she goes with him, she's fixated on his eyes. And it's like, But, man, her going straight to the Navy and demanding to see Dythard. And then the one guy tries to stop her, and it's the first time in the present that we see her like, nope, and just flips his arm and is like, get out. And she like literally just breaks a shoulder, and Dythard's like, if you want to die, you'll fight her, but otherwise, what does she want? And he's instantly like, so like, he's like, stand down, let her say her piece, because he knows what she's capable of, even if these guys don't. And I just, how emotional this whole scene at the start between her and Dythard, I wanted to talk about it so badly in the moment, and I was like, oh, we can't talk about it yet. But he instantly is like, what was up with you? And then at first he says, once a weapon, always a weapon. Like he's like, nothing has changed about you. Even though you're an auto memory doll, nothing's changed. You're still a weapon. You can still do all this damage. And you could tell that Violet has like the lines under her eyes where she's been crying. And here's the thing. She's like, you tell me, is it true that Major Gilbert is missing in action? And we see her get sad, but we don't see her totally sad. And then Dythard's expression, oh my gosh. And he's like, you didn't know? You didn't know that he was missing in action? Like, he expected her. So I guess that's why when she got off the boat earlier, he didn't say anything about it, because he didn't say anything about it because he was like, oh, well, she already knows. But his expression, he's like, you didn't know? And so I was waiting for him to get emotional about it because it's his brother. And then he's like, and she doesn't let him finish the sentence. He's like, he's no longer, she's like, that's not true. That's impossible. The Major's alive. Like, she just can't cope. And then that line, why are you making that face? You were just a tool to him. You're just an emotionless tool. So how could you be sad? And it's like, oh, you don't realize. And then we spend the whole episode tracing their steps back and forth to see like how much their relationship developed and grew over time. And Dythard doesn't realize. He's like, I'm like, did you really think your brother just used her as a tool this whole time? Like, you know your brother and how compassionate he is. Like, no. And then for him to have this, I love that Dythard gets to see that Violet is emotional, that she's sad. And it's like, yeah, she loved him and loves him, and he loved her. And it's like, oh my God. And then I love that Catalina is like, are you an idiot to Hodgins? Because Hodgins like, well, she should be able to accept the truth right now. And I love her slamming on the desk, and she's like, you're an idiot. You have the worst timing. And I love Hodgins being like, oh God, no. But she's like, you have no idea how women feel. Like, you can't just do this. And Hodgins, of course, who has no clue. And she's like, you have to go find her and make this right. And he's like, yeah. But the question is, is he gonna find her at the house with the grave? Oh man. And her clutching the brooch. The fact of the matter that she was a husk, like a shell of a person, just a weapon that they had just utilized. And they just used her in this war. And she's walking past these ruins where things are getting built. And then we go to the house, and it reminded me of The Little Mermaid, like when Ariel gets brought back in the coat and everything to the house to get all fixed up. It reminded me of that. But Gilbert gave her his coat. And then, like, she tries to get her dressed, and of course she knows nothing but battling people and hurting people. So Violet doesn't know anything different. So of course, when she sees a hand reach out to her, she's like, oh, somebody's gonna like grab me or do something. And Gilbert's like, no. And then, oh my God, it's just like from square one. Like, she's this kid that has known nothing but war and violence. And so that's all she knows. And they probably told her not to speak. They've told her when to eat. They probably, not tortured her, but they've probably mistreated her, malnourished her. They've told her not to speak, that, you're seen and not heard. You can just see all that plastered across her face, that she's just lived this life of being nothing but used by people. And Gilbert is the first person to get across to her that no, you have humanity. You're a person. You should be treated like a person. And I love that she focuses on his eyes. And then when she says that they're beautiful, ever since I met you, I thought your eyes were beautiful. Oh my gosh. But and then he tries to give her the blanket. And of course, she thinks that he's trying to cover her up. Like, people have probably covered her up before. And she's just like an animal. Like, she's just been treated as such. And he's like, you're going to get cold. And he's trying to help her. I love the focus on eyes in this episode. Like, they focus on people's eyes so much. And of course, Keone. And of course, because he's the first person to show her kindness, she looks all over for him when he goes missing. And then she stumbles across him and saying that she was looking for him. And he looks at her just, it's crazy. Like, there's part of me that he's looking at her like he feels sorry for her. And part of me that's like he feels like she needs to be protected. Like, he wants to instantly protect her. And I don't necessarily think you could take it as romantic. I could instantly see how you could take it as romantic. I could, absolutely. Sure. We just had in episode 5 established that in this world, Charlotte and Damien, the whole concept of love it's not bound by age, as this show says. So if that's the show's philosophy, that love knows no age boundaries, then sure. If you wanted to take this as romantic, that he falls in love with her just like she falls in love with him, sure, you can absolutely do that. Go for it. But you could also take it as like parental love. You could take it as a brotherly love. You could take it as platonic love. You could take it. It can be anything you want to make of it, because nothing's set in stone, right? But the point is that he does love her, and that he's realizing that he loves her. And so as the episode goes on, he's trying different ways to protect her. Like when he confronts the general, he's like, she shouldn't go on the front lines. And they're like, this is an order from the top. She's going to be used as a weapon. And it's so disgusting. He's like, you've seen what she can do. Just, she's good for killing, useless for anything else. Use her, discard her, move on. Take her with you and just get rid of her when she's done. And you can tell Gilbert's like, that's not what he thinks at all. Exploit this orphan girl and dump her in the battlefield when she's no longer of use. And Gilbert's like, that's not it. And then they don't give him any. And they say, we have no time for your hypocrisy. So I guess it's saying that, you don't, it's like, you don't want to bring this girl on the battlefield, but you still want to win the battle. So, but man, I love Gilbert. I love Gilbert's character. Like, in this, you can tell he's struggling so hard dealing with his emotions and how he feels for Violet. And the fact that he's like, he feels for her, but they're in the middle of a war. And it's just, and yeah, like I said, they do this whole thing with Capria and all this, and I'm like, the war of attrition. It's like, yeah, sure, we get it. This is all just a backdrop, a setup for these characters to be in this conflict. It's just a setup of the conflict. And you can see Hodgins in the back there in the group when they're doing like the talk about the bombings. And so the idea was that they were, they were half the size of the enemy and they were still going through. And man, just the idea of fire too, the use of fire in this. Fire is like prevalent throughout this entire episode. There's like the fire in the lanterns in the town. There's the fire of the torches. There's the fire when they're, and that goes back to Violet saying, I'm burning, and her describing herself as burning up from the guilt and from the weight of everything. And I love that we get fire as a metaphor throughout this episode, just gunfire and torches and the lanterns, like everything is all around and it's just illuminating everything. But oh my gosh. And him seeing her fight. And man, Violet's showing just how deadly she is. She's just so quiet and she just sneaks up and just kills him like that. Like just slices her neck and moves on. Like how easy it was. And that's the thing with Keone, like all the movements and the animation, the action was all so fluid. It was so fluid and just so like clear and elegant almost. It's really weird. Like I couldn't imagine Keone doing like a violent war story, but they do. And they do it so elegantly. It's kind of, it's so, the contrasting is so interesting. But yeah, Gilbert seeing her fight and seeing how she's just killing these people, and seeing him get emotional, where he's realizing, like, just the look in her eyes, the fire in her eyes, and they're just dead. Like, it's almost like she feels bad. She doesn't know what else to do except kill people. That's all she's been trained to do. And Gilbert getting emotional about it, but still having to lead the attack. Yep. It's rough. It's rough. Gilbert gets emotional as Violet does. It's like, oh my God. And just all the things that she does. And then her slowly making her way back to the house. And I love that we've gone from it being so vivid and colorful and vibrant to just everything's muted. And as the scene goes on and Violet gets closer to the grave, the colors get more and more muted. It's just like everything slowly is like caving in on her. And everything gets grayer and grayer. Like, it didn't hit me until rewatching it now that everything just gets more like gray tone. And then she's like, he's here, right? And then the woman takes her to him. Or to his grave. And it's like, and even though he's missing in action, yeah, and he's missing in action and they don't have an actual body, the grave that they made. And she can read now, Gilbert. And she's always known him as the Major. She says, this is the Major's name. And then we go back to him naming her and giving her the name Violet so that she's not a tool, to give her humanity back. And saying she should become someone that matches that name. And, oh my God. And then that's like the first time she said words. And he's like, oh, you can understand me? And it's like, yes. And him teaching her how to read and write. It's too much. And they still say he was deemed missing in action. And oh my God, her eyes are so dead in that shot. But we go back to the episode 1 where they're walking to the shot and there's all the lanterns and it's Thanksgiving. And he says you give a gift to someone you're thankful for. And he wants to give her a gift. And part of me is like, were you giving her the gift because you were thankful for the effort in the war, but because he likes her and he wants to give her a gift? And then she finds the brooch. And oh my God, that whole thing with and he looks at her and her knees are all scraped up and everything, and he decides not to bring up anymore. He's like, I'm not bringing up the war anymore. And then he's like, well, girls your age should like dresses and accessories. And I like that she's still very much like we see in episode 1. She's like, well, then I want dresses and accessories. And he's like, should have been more specific. And then she finds the brooch. And she says, these look like your eyes. And that feeling, the moment she finds the brooch, the feeling that she feels, it's love. She feels love. Like looking into his eyes. And just him getting emotional about it too. I can't do it, y'all. I can't. Nope. I've never heard the word beautiful until now. Is it like the word pretty? And that's the thing. He asks her, he's like, well, why didn't you want a brooch that was like your eyes? And that's not it. You didn't want one. She's like, this was the most beautiful one. Oh my God. And when she just says, I didn't know the word, which is why I never said it before. And that's when she says, but your eyes were beautiful from the moment we met. He's like, what do you do with that, So it's like, and then he goes and he puts the brooch on her little coat. So she has it. And it's why she wears the brooch like that now, right? Oh my gosh. With that. Oh. And it kills me. It kills me because when she says thank you and he's like about to cry, it's like there's all these different possibilities, right? There's so many possibilities in this moment of what that could mean, of why he's about to cry. It's like on the one hand, he realizes that she is a human, and he feels bad that she's in the middle of this war being used as a weapon and not being given the right to her humanity. He's like, you're a young girl, you shouldn't be in the middle of all this, you should be doing other things instead of being used. So there's that possibility. There's a possibility he feels bad because she's being treated as subhuman when she's really not. She's so much capable of so much more than that. And then there's the possibility that yeah, he loves her, and you can take it as platonic love, that he loves her and realizes that this is the worst thing for her, but he's in the middle of it. He's drug her through it. So what can he do? It's like the other general said, he's like, are you going to be a hypocrite, you know? And then you can take it as romantic, like he realizes that he does love her, and it's the same problem. They're in the middle of a war. She could die, and he's got to deal with that. So there's so many ways you could take it, and they're not wrong. But him about to cry, that just broke my heart. And then, yeah, we get to Hodgins. And it strikes me, I don't remember, God, it's been so long since I've seen episode 1. I don't remember if she recognized him from before, if she recognized him from this moment. Because I don't think she recognized him, but she also was just recovering from being nearly blown up in the cathedral. So it could be that her memories were jarred. But she, like, you know, and when he's like roughhousing with, it's kind of like a dog, right? It's like, they called her a dog earlier on, but it's kind of like that where he was like roughhousing with Gilbert, and she looked like she was about to attack him, like a dog about to, you know, attack someone that's messing with its owner. And that's not the case. They're like, oh, no. But show, you just had to do it. You just had to go there. Like when Hodgins like, oh, I'm thinking of starting my own business and you can come work with me after the war. I'm like, how dare you, show? How dare you give us that false hope? How dare you? And then just throw it right back in our face. It's like, that's the cruelest thing you could have done, isn't it? I love the duality that Hodgins has the red hair and Gilbert has the blue hair and Violet has the yellow hair. It's like your primary colors are all right there. You got your blue, red, and yellow right there. But the idea that they're opposites, Hodgins and Gilbert, and Hodgins remembers her from the training ground just like he did in episode 1. And he's like, you've still had her with you? And she's the one that caused all the havoc in Capria. And Gilbert's like, yep, but and there's rumors going around that she's your weapon. So you should make her do something else. And it's like, and there's a sense there too, like the rumor is that she's Gilbert's weapon, that she's his, like that ownership. And you can tell Gilbert gets frustrated because he's like, no, she's a human, she's her own person, I don't own her. But there's also a sense too that Gilbert is upset and frustrated because he can't protect her in this situation. He's like, as long as we're at war like this, I can't protect her and keep her safe. And it's like, And then, yeah. And then, of course, Violet's like, are you sending me away? Because when Gilbert and Hodgins have that conversation about Violet going to work for him after the war, you know, Gilbert probably doesn't think that Violet is putting 2 and 2 together, but she is. And she's like, are you sending me away after all this? Do you not want me to be with you anymore? And that's not the case at all. She's like, do you no longer need me? And then you can just tell Gilbert's like, shit, that's not what I meant. And it looks like she's getting really sad there. Well, I never receive any orders from you, Major. And he told her to write the daily reports. And he tells her you've done nothing wrong. And we'll talk about this later. But yeah, the whole idea that ever since episode 1, she's been wanting to write the daily reports because that's what he had her do. And she wanted to do it for him. It's like, show, how dare you? And then, yeah, we get to the fortress and everything. And just, again, Keone killing it with this animation. But I was not prepared. Like, the signal, the smoke signal, like, and then we see Gilbert standing above the ruins and all this fire and stuff. And they're both at the top of the cathedral, like, they fought their way there. And they're, like, bloody and everything. And he fires the flare. And that green that's just, damn, it's so beautiful. It's like, oh my God. And Hodgins is like, oh, they did it. Yay. So I've got to see when he gets hit. It's the worst. It's the worst thing. Because it looks like fireworks, but it's not. And she's like looking back at him, and it almost seems like he's thinking of something to say to her. Like, was he planning on telling her then and there? But then, and he goes to smile at her. Why? Why? And he gets hit, but it looked like it hit his helmet. And those guys, they shot him from the side. Okay. It hit his eye. It hit his eye, but maybe it just like nicked the face and hit the edge of the. It looked like it maybe hit the edge of the hat and nicked the face. It looked like it hit the edge of his helmet and maybe nicked his face, like ricocheted. And then the fire just rises higher, like it's burning. That metaphor of burning in her. But he lived long enough after that to tell her that he loved her. So surely. Show. Oh my gosh. Show. I'm torn. I'm torn because part of me is like, no, he's alive, but then part of me is like, no, he's dead. And it's frustrating either way, because either way, if he is alive, cool. Great. We'll have something to look, there'll be a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. But I don't know, with this series, there's been all this talk about death and grief and getting over grief. We've spent like the last 5 episodes dealing with some form of grief or another. And so I'm like, has this all been building up to Violet being able to deal with the death of the Major and moving on? This is hard. This is the saddest love story in the world, because, and it is a love story. I'm fully convinced. It doesn't have to be a sexual or romantic love story, but it's a love story about 2 people that love each other. And the one like gaining her humanity back and dealing with that lost love. And I don't know what to do. I don't know how to feel. I feel so conflicted and torn. I don't want y'all to spoil me. Please don't spoil me. If he lives, don't spoil me. If he's dead, don't spoil me. Just don't give me spoilers. I need to sit on this. But damn, Gilbert, man, a man of the ages. And we haven't seen hardly enough of him. Oh God, this episode, oof. I cried last episode, but this episode, like, gut knife to the heart, straight in. So there's that. I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I need to go back and rewatch this episode. But yeah, if he is dead, then she's going to have to cope. And that's going to be hard, because this whole time she's had him by her side through everything. He's been the one to show her compassion and what humanity is. And because of him, she's slowly been able to make those steps to gain that humanity back. And now, what do? Don't like it. I don't like it at all. So there's that. Fun times. But I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I hope you enjoyed this reaction. Have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I will be back next week with episode 9 of Violet Evergarden. Bye.